It's the Jarvcast. Welcome back to the Jarvcast. It's June 30th, 2023. And that means it's time for another Jarvcast. Hit me up at jarvcast@gmail.com. Well, another terrible month of baseball for the Cardinals. They are still in last place. Had another crushing loss last night. Lost 14-0 last night at home. They are 9.5 games back. It's about halfway through the season. On the bright side, Jordan Walker's been doing good. I believe he just tied Pujols' 17-game hitting streak. He seems to get a hit almost every day. So good for him. I'm not giving up on him yet. I think if they made some good moves, but that's the problem. When they make moves, last few years, they have turned out to not work in our favor. And we got definitely no championships to show for these moves either. But there's been some exciting baseball nonetheless. Ellie De La Cruz and Cincinnati Reds have been fun to watch. But the Cardinals, Hicks has been a bright spot. But Gallegos, man, he blew enough games as a closer. Now he's blowing the games as a setup guy. And, he has flashes when he looks great, but he needs to work on something. I think it's the pitch clock. He was the one pitcher that took forever between pitches, if you recall last year. I think they clocked it, and he took the longest in baseball in between pitches. And it was boring. I hated when he was pitching because it was just like, oh, here we go. This inning's going to take 45 minutes because he just walks around the mound with the ball and rubs it down and does all this, routine stuff. But, well, you can't do that anymore. You got 15 seconds or whatever it is to throw the ball, and I think it's messing with his head. Well, anyway. Yeah, June was a good month. Nest came in, and we played the Stay Awesome Fest. That's Hollis's memorial every year. Hollis was a great dude, of course. We've never met him. He was a legend in the New Orleans scene. Anytime I came to town, he was the first guy I'd hit up. There's times he'd pick me up from the airport and take me to the Guitar Center and take me where I needed to go. He's a good dude, so it was nice to play the show and see his family and see a lot of friends and a lot of good bands. Crazy sets, like, what was it? It was Gary from I Hate God's band. And I almost got hit in the head with a trash can. Was it not Hogjaw? Now I'm going to have to look this up. But the singer of the band, who I remember, he owned he owned Siberia at one point or something. I remember settling up with him years ago, so I recognized him. He's just a huge dude. At one point just picks up this, and he didn't start the trash can throwing. That was, I guess, a Hollis thing. And he just picked up this trash can and whipped it towards my area as hard as he could, and I just braced because I was coming right at me. And luckily it hit right above my head against the wall. Let me see here. Some of the Class Hole. That was the name of the band, Classhole. Apparently, it was their first show in 10 years. It was killer. A lot of great sets, a lot of great bands. We had a good time. Uh, saw some great shows as usual throughout the month. It was just at the I Hate God show the other night, and it was a venue I'd played before. I totally forgot that you could smoke in there. Oh, it's just disgusting. Like the even the smokers come outside to smoke, and we're just like, it's smoky in there. It's too smoky, so it's too gross. But yeah, there's a lot of great music down here. A lot of great bands. A lot of great locals. Sounding put on a great set. They're one of my favorite local bands down here. But yeah, June's been great. It was my birthday the other day. 44. And today is actually Phil Anselmo's birthday. He's 55. Happy birthday to Phil. He'll be playing, I guess Pantera's doing their final European show. And then they'll be heading to the States for the Lamb of God Pantera Housecore Bands tour. Now, how fucking cool is that? Now, a little insight. Maybe I've mentioned this before, but I'm pretty lucky, and I actually knew about the Pantera thing a little early. He let me know about it before the announcement. I'd say about 6 months before it was announced. And he said, I'm going to take my bands, my housecore bands, along with me. I'm going to help promote the music I like, and I'm going to use this opportunity to help the bands I love. And, at the time, I believed him, of course. But it's easier, I guess, said than done. You got to go through a lot of red tape to put a Pantera tour together, and then the opening acts and all that. But he got almost every active housecore band some opening gigs for Pantera. It's about the coolest thing you can do. That's a life-changing thing for bands. That's career-changing. It's in those cities, they'll forever be remembered as the band that opened for Pantera. And I remember those bands. I think about some of the first shows I went to. Let's see, it was like White Zombie at American Theater, right when La Sexorcisto came out. And I remember my dad picked me up, and the police officer said, "What are you doing here, sir?" And he's like, "I'm here to pick up my son." And the police officer said, "You let your son go in there?" Like, it's crazy in there. And anyway, the opening band was called Chem Lab, and we didn't know who Chem Lab was. And well, anyway, to this day, they're the band that opened for White Zombie. They were killer. They were great. And if Chem Lab came to town, I would say, oh shit, that's the band that opened for White Zombie 30 years ago. I'm going to go see that again. Just for nostalgia reasons, And the first time I saw Pantera, it was Crowbar opened up. I didn't know who Crowbar was. I was in high school. Some of the older kids, Chris Ebel, Justin Schmidt, to be exact, took me to the show, and I'll never forget that was also the first time I heard Tool was that night. Played the Opiate cassette. But on the way to the show, talking about, we're gonna get up front, we're gonna get, in the pit, So that's, you see all these Pantera videos. This is our first Pantera show. You see the videos, and there's, stage diving and crazy shit going on. And I couldn't wait. The excitement of starting the pit during when Crowbar started. Everyone's kind of just head banging because it's heavy. I just couldn't wait. I started the first pit, and that was the first mosh pit I was ever in my whole life. But I guess my point is, ever since, Crowbar's been the band that opened for Pantera. And anytime they'd come to town, I'd go just because of that show. I didn't, you know, the Beavis and Butthead was big for them, of course, too. But it was opening for Pantera is what turned me on to Crowbar. And Deftones. First time I heard Deftones, I heard one song on a radio show on The Point. But the first time I actually heard the Deftones live, or more than the radio song, was thanks to Pantera. And they turned out to be one of my favorite bands. That was I Hate God on that show also. Like, how many people would have known about I Hate God back then if it wasn't for Pantera? I mean, Phil was wearing that shirt, And that was another thing. When he wears someone band's shirt, it's a big deal for the band, because it opens this, it's almost like a stamp of approval. And when I'd see St. Vitus shirt, for example, I had to say, okay, well, I guess who the fuck is that? I don't know. I need to go check it out. And then 9 times out of 10, he'd wear a shirt, the band would be killer. And, when you're a music fan, you want to hear new bands. And myself, I'm always open to hearing news. I force myself to listen to new bands. I try to every day. But just, I think it's the coolest thing in the world for him to open the doors for the stuff he likes. And he did it even back in the old Pantera days. So it's cool to keep the tradition going, because let's face it, there's millions of bands that would love that opening slot, myself included. But I'm happy for all these housecore bands, because it's going to be life changing for them. You'd hope they take this and it springboards them to the next level in being a band. And it's sometimes a scary step for some people, because you gotta sacrifice some things when you're the opening band of any large tour like that, or any tour at all. Any small tour is, you have to make sacrifices. But it's a risk you got to take if you want to make it to that next level. And once you get to that level where you're touring constantly and you're selling enough merch, it's definitely better than working a real job. At least that's the way I've always looked at it. But yep, pumped for the Pantera tours. I'll definitely be at the St. Louis show. Metallica, and I think Wolfgang Van Halen also on the show. Pretty cool. And what else? Let's see. There's hopefully there's the smoke will be gone by then. The Canadian wildfire smoke. I mean, I'm lucky I haven't had to deal with it yet, but I'm doing my part by I was going to burn a bunch of stuff in a big fire pit, but I just said, you know what? I'm just not going to do that. until this dies down. But I've been reading, it might take months. It might be a smoky summer. So that's not good. Uh, I don't know what else people could do, but just go south. I don't. What else can you do? You can't really stay inside all the time. People will make people go crazy though. So I don't know. It's pretty scary, really. And the fires aren't like out yet. That's the I guess the worst part is like they don't know when they're or if they can get these fires out. So that's fucked up. Of course, that another big thing that happened this month was the submarine to the Titanic. How crazy was that? Like just imagining being stuck down there and being like, oh, like with just a few dudes in a small space and like you're not going anywhere. Like at least that's what people were thinking for days. Like that maybe they can be saved. But I guess it turns out it wasn't made for going that deep in the ocean, and it just exploded, and they probably died a super quick death. So they didn't suffer like that. But it made you wonder, like how crazy that would make you go for those few days. And how crazy people are just to want to. Why would you? I don't know. I know people that do deep sea diving, and it looks fun and beautiful, but in a small little thing, I don't know. It didn't look like a lot of fun to me. But what do I know? But besides that, July 4th coming up. There's a fireworks display I might be going to. They have it's called the Uncle Sam Jam. They got Bret Michaels playing and Starship and Orleans also on the bill. So that's a free thing kind of nearby, so I might check that out. And July looks like the Creepy Fest is the big local show going on. A lot of cool bands are playing. It's at the Parasite Skate Park, and it's actually all over town. It's like 6 different venues or something. There's some really cool bands playing. Brat on the Hogjaw at Final Conflict. So that's pretty cool. And one last thing, I found a band called the Yellow River Boys, and it's a comedy thing. And at first, when I first heard it, I didn't know who it was, and it's Tim Heidecker from Tim and Eric. And once I realized or found out it was him, it kind of all clicked, and it became way more funny. But I'll spare you the details. I'll let you quench your own thirst, so to say. Check out the Yellow River Boys. And I'll see you next month on the Jarvcast. See you later.